Every practice you've ever tried has the same central core problem, be that yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and even Reiki. And the problem is not in the practice itself, but this central flaw is actually found in the way the practice is taught. And until this problem is identified in you and your practice, then the practice won't stick. Here's what happens in most trainings. When we go and we learn things like yoga, Reiki, meditation, we learn how to do the fundamentals. We learn the hand positions, the asana. We learn the meditations. We learn how to do the practice. And then you go home and you apply it. You apply it to your daily life and all the nuances that we have with our lives, our stresses, our anxieties, our difficulties. I know when I was learning all the modalities that I practice, I was doing the same thing. So excited to bring what I had just learned into the fold of my daily life. And sometimes that works. Sometimes we recognize positive change with these practices as we integrate them into the fold of our daily existence. But those results rarely stick. They rarely last. The problem is that these techniques are conveyed without a foundation, and that's like building a house on sand. And this very foundation, this is the thing that so often gets skipped. It's so often, yes, covered in the trainings and the manuals. Absolutely, there might be a portion of your course dedicated to these foundational elements, but usually that's it. And we rush into the doing of the practice, and this is the fundamental flaw. And this is not because teachers don't care. This is not because people aren't passionate about what they teach. But in my opinion, it's because we've been trained to think that the techniques of the practice are the practice. And this is the problem. I think it's really beautiful to notice that all of the modalities that I've mentioned here, and even expanding that list into things like Buddhism, Christianity, spirituality, they all have at their core a set of tenets, a set of guidelines that need to be in place before the modality or the practice or the religious path takes shape. These are not techniques, they're not principles, but rather they're a set of guidelines and rules on how to live our life, how to conduct our daily transactions and our daily existence with increased levels of peace, increased levels of calm, and increased devotion to turning inward. In yoga, we could view this as the first two limbs. This is before the asana, it's before the postures, it's before the time on the mat. This is the guidelines in living your life. This is your level of compassion, not when people are watching, not when you're at the yoga studio, but when nobody's watching. Compassion to yourself, compassion to the more vulnerable, compassion to the aspects of you that need that compassion. This is restating the importance of surrendering into the self and self-discipline, doing the work before we arrive to the mat, before the asana. That's what's most important, not the posture. Asana without the framing is just stretching. In the world of mindfulness, these are the attitudes. It's working on the nature of the mind. It's learning to let go. It's learning to forgive and sit with the true nature of yourself. These aren't add-ons to mindfulness. This is the very foundation of the practice itself. But what happens in the world of mindfulness is it's most often just glossed over. Sit down on the mat, be aware of your surroundings, turn inward. But we're missing the point. Again, the foundational element is not there. In Reiki Ryoho, this is obviously the Gokai, the 5 guiding precepts, and the titles that lead into the precepts, which I find to be so beautiful. Shofuku no Hiho, Membyo no Reaku, Koyo dake wa ikaru na, Shimpai suna, Kansha shite, Gyoagame shito ni shinsetsu ni. As my teacher in Japan, Inamoto Sensei, reminds us of all the time with deep wisdom and compassion, that this is the most fundamental aspect of the entire practice of Reiki Ryoho, the guiding precepts. It's not about healing here. It's about recognizing the state of our being in this very moment. And so you see, this is not a warm-up material. It's not a mantra to start your practice. This is the practice. This is the state. This is the foundation. If we don't work on the nature of our mind, if we don't work to let go of our anger and our worry, then what point is there to practice, right? I mean, what's the use in sitting down and practicing if we're balled up in anger or if we're just a mess of a big ball of anxiety? And see, in most Reiki trainings, of course, the guiding precepts are mentioned. Of course, they're reviewed. Maybe they're meditated on. Maybe the importance is understood. I would bet in far fewer trainings, the depth of the precepts is actually explored. I would bet that most trainings don't even talk about the initial two titles, Shofuku no Hiho, Mambyo no Ryaku. Shofuku no Hiho reminds us that there's this mystic art that invites in pure happiness. And Mambyo no Ryaku, this is the recognition from this happiness that we can find a quote-unquote miraculous medicine to cure all diseases. So why is that let out? Why do people not know this? To me, this is the framing of the foundational work. If we recognize that there is a practice out there that can invite in true happiness, and what does that mean in brief? True happiness to me means I'm letting go of this. It means I'm at peace. So see, if I can be at peace in all of my circumstances, in all of my waking existence, then I find this miraculous medicine to cure all diseases. Now, there's a lot to go into this point here. There's so much to unpack. So for right now, let's just view that as the framing of the foundation. We recognize that peace and prosperity and stillness, they're possible. That's the key. We recognize that this miraculous medicine to cure all diseases is possible. But what do we have to do? We have to build the internal foundation that the framing is constructing. That foundation rests on a mind and a body that actively lets go of anger and worry. That's the key in these precepts and why they're so valuable. And if we take a moment and we compare them to all the other modalities, we find the same language. Different cultural context, yes. Maybe a different packaging, a different arrangement, yes. But there always remains the core thread, turning inward and letting the mind and the body settle. If we don't do that, if we just turn up to the studio and begin sun salutations without working on the first two limbs, without working on the nature of the self, then we're just stretching. If we begin our Reiki practice without starting our day and incorporating and striving to live by the guiding precepts, then we get lost in the action and attachment of doing. We get lost in the idea that Reiki is a healing modality, that I can give to something else, that I can do these things to the external world, and we're always missing the point. See, the thread that binds all of this is the internal state. All of these practices that I've mentioned, every single one of them, is about you and your internal narrative, your internal resistance. Yet what happens in most teachings, what happens in most conveyances of these modalities? External, do, attach, believe, spectacle. This is the problem. And here's where I think we all need to be very honest with our practice, because absolutely you would have heard these things. Absolutely they would have been incorporated in your trainings. But are they guiding your life? Do you wake up in the morning and strive to live by these guidelines? Are they alive in you today, right now? When you got frustrated yesterday, did you remember the guiding precepts, the Gokai? When you get angry, do you pause and remember the importance of this very foundation? We will say yes, but in practice, that's where it counts. And in practice, most of us forget. You see, this is the difference in having received the teachings and living by the teachings. You know, for me, I strive to make the guiding precepts of Reiki Ryoho the director in my life. I strive to live by these things. Do I fail at that? Every single day. I fail at that all the time. That's not failure, though. It's a moment or an opportunity of recognition. It's a moment to step in to our humanness, to be gentle and kind to ourselves and recognize, yes, I got angry because I'm human, because life came at me. Okay? But what do? We return. And the returning is built on that strong foundation. If that foundation is presented to you and then not incorporated into your life with strength and rigidity, then we will never return to it. As we don't return to the foundation, we begin to lose track of the practice, because just like a house built on a foundation of sand, the practice will crumble. And so what does that look like then in a lived practice? This means turning up honestly for yourself and assessing, within whatever modality it is that you resonate with, assessing if you're actually living by the guiding tenets of that practice. Maybe you need to write them down somewhere convenient. Maybe you recite them while you're brushing your teeth or before you begin your practice in quiet meditative contemplation. Whatever works for you. For me, I think the most important characteristic of the integration of any of these guiding tenets is not when it's easy, but when it's hard. When we catch ourselves having fallen down. When we catch ourselves being fueled by the very things that these tenets aim to relieve in our lives, the anger, the bitterness, the hatred, the anxiety, whatever it is, they will creep up, and they are not bad because these are moments for you to return. That's the beauty of these. That's the invitation that they offer. Take whatever modality resonates with you and recognize the foundation. Recognize the guiding tenets. That's the practice. Not turning up and doing the stretching or doing the hand placements or doing the breathing or sitting in half lotus in mindfulness meditation. That's irrelevant. If we don't have the foundation, then the practice is noise. It's just doing. We don't do, we embody, we live. We strive our best to walk in the very peace and harmony that these guiding precepts, these guiding tenets will provide for us. So make that your practice, and I promise everything else will follow. Everything else will fall into place because you're returning to the foundation. You're returning to the root, to the base every single time. Be well, everybody, and as always, in Gosho to all.